This book provides a detailed roadmap for implementing the classical module of education at home. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the Scholastica bookshelf, a brand new series in which we explore educational books for the benefit of Muslim parents, homeschoolers and educators. Today I'm looking forward to discussing a book that has had a profound impact on my home education journey, and that is The Well-Trained Mind by Susan Wise Bauer and Jessie Wise. If you've been in the homeschool scene for a while, especially in the United States, you've probably heard about this book. The Well-Trained Mind has been through multiple editions and remains a cornerstone of what's known as the classical education model. When I was starting out as a homeschooler, this book was invaluable. It gave me a sense of direction and a foundation to build upon, even though I didn't stick to it strictly. It's a resource that's structured, practical and steeped in tradition, which is exactly what I needed when I was first starting out in home education. So what is classical education? At its core, it's an approach to education that divides learning into three developmental stages called the TRIVIUM, which is made up of grammar, logic and rhetoric. Each of these stages correspond to how children grow and learn, focusing on building a strong foundation in the early years, developing critical thinking skills in the middle years, and mastering communication and self-expression in the later years. This approach has resonated with many homeschoolers and even tallies with how many traditional societies have structured education. This even includes Islamic societies, and there is some wonderful work being done at the moment by Sheikh Mustafa Steyer through his project Living Insights. In this project, he is mapping out Islamic classical approaches to education and pedagogical frameworks. I'll link his work here and put it in the description box below, and I highly encourage you to check that out. We'll delve more into the connections between Islamic education and the TRIVIUM and the classical model of education, inshallah, in a future video. Of course, classical education is not the only educational philosophy out there. You've got approaches like Steiner Waldorf education, the Montessori, Charlotte Mason, unschooling. But the classical model of education really does stand out as a structured and stage-based route to learning for the different stages of children's development, which has matched so many other cultures and civilizations in the way that we model education. So now let's get into discussing The Well-Trained Mind itself. So this is what's called the Essential Edition, which is new. I actually bought this book back in 2012 or so. I was pregnant with my first child, so already interested in home education at that time. And so this is the book that I purchased then. This was, I believe, the third edition at the time. This book provides a detailed roadmap for implementing the classical module of education at home. So the thing I love about The Well-Trained Mind is that it's such a thorough book. It really covers home education in a lot of detail. And so when you are first starting out, you want something like this. It's one volume, it's succinct, but it does have that thoroughness and it will make you feel like you've got a handle on this venture that is homeschooling. So as you can see from the content, it's very thorough. It will go through the stages of the TRIVIUM that she describes. In the introduction, she's got a very helpful explanation of what really is the well-trained mind and what is the classical approach. She writes, "What is classical education? It is language intensive, not image focused. It demands that students use and understand words, spoken and written, rather than communicating primarily through images. It is history intensive, providing students with a comprehensive view of human endeavour from the beginning until now. It trains the mind to analyse and draw conclusions." We then receive a thorough explanation about the TRIVIUM. This is the classical pattern of the TRIVIUM, the three-part process of training the mind. The first years of schooling are called the grammar stage, not because you spend 4 years doing English, but because these are the years in which the building blocks for all other learning are laid. She goes on to explain somewhere around 4th or 5th grade, the US equivalent of what we would call year 5 or year 6 in the UK, children begin to think more analytically. Middle school students are less interested in finding out facts than asking why. The second phase of the classical education, the logic stage, is a time when the child begins to pay attention to cause and effect. to the relationships among different fields of knowledge, to the way facts fit together into a logical framework. The final phase of a classical education, the rhetoric stage, builds on the first two. At this point, the high school student learns to write and speak with force and originality. The student of rhetoric applies the rules of logic learned in middle school to the foundational information learned in the early grades and expresses her conclusions in clear, forceful, elegant language. The authors don't just stop at the philosophy of this kind of education, but give extremely practical, referenced examples of how one can implement these principles in grammar and reading, writing, arithmetic, science, history, language arts, the foreign languages, and even there are sections now in the updated edition which talk about screens, digital learning, and so on. The wisdom in this book comes from experience. Jessie Wise homeschooled her own children, and now her daughter, Susan Wise Bauer, is homeschooling her kids, while also contributing to this field as an author and educator. Their website and resources are a treasure trove for homeschoolers who want to dive deeper into the classical model of education. One of the things I love about this book, it's that it's got practical wisdoms and it's got advice and specific book recommendations and so on, but it's combined and intertwined within this personal story of Susan Wise Bauer and telling everyone how she was homeschooled and how she loved that experience. So I can really see myself imagining the life of this homeschool family and seeing that, you know, this isn't just some abstract concept of education. This isn't something that was taught in medieval monasteries as classical model or elite top colleges where the rich and famous or the royalty are taught. Classical education is something that I can implement in my own home with my family. I love also how the book has so many examples of just really down-to-earth, here's what homeschooling is really like. She's got over a page and a half of bullet point reasons why one would want to homeschool, as well as a very down-to-earth section on the realities of homeschooling. For me, The Well-Trained Mind was an invaluable starting point. While we don't follow it rigidly as a family, it created the foundation for me to feel confident as a home educator that, yeah, we can implement this in our home. We can figure out that these are the core bases that need covering, and we can go a little bit off-piste. You know, you take that as your foundation and then you add and subtract depending on the needs of your family, depending on other priorities, commitments, and other recommendations that you receive. For me, this wasn't just a book. It was a mentor in print that could guide me through the somewhat overwhelming world of home education when you're first starting out. That's it for today's episode of the Scholastica Bookshelf. I hope this has inspired you to pick up this book and delve a bit further into the classical education model. If you've read the book or if you have thoughts on the classical education model, I would love to hear from you. Drop your comments down below and do share this video with your friends. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe and tap that notification bell so that you don't miss the next episode of the Scholastica Bookshelf. Jazakumullah khair, and we'll see you next time.